Hi, this is Robert Greer. This is the final video for SE456. I'll start by showing the game and showing off the game features. So here's the starting select screen. It shows the instructions as well as the buttons to press for single or multiplayer. And it also gives you the table of points for each of the alien types. So I'll go ahead and start a single player game to show off the in-game features. So here I am in game. I have my player icon that I can move left to right. I can shoot my missile, but only one at a time. The missile can collide with the aliens, it can collide with the shield, it can collide with the top wall, and all that fun stuff. Next I will jump down to the aliens. So you can see I have the 5x11 grid here of aliens. I have 2 rows of octopus, crab, and then 1 row of squid at the top. The aliens move side to side, and then when they hit the wall, they're going to move down until they get to the bottom of the screen. So for example, I can show the grid here, and if I destroy a column, I can actually change how the grid moves, because now it'll need to move farther to hit the side of the wall before it can move down and start moving back. So destroying the aliens affects their movement. Next, for the alien animations, you can see they are in sync with the movement as well as the sound. And as I destroy them, you should hear the tempo of the grid starts to increase with the animations as well as the sound. Next, for the alien bombs, so they're dropping 3 different types of bombs. You have the squiggly ones, you have the dagger ones, and then the straight ones. So each of those types of bombs can kill the player, it can destroy the shields, and it has 3 different strategies for how to display that. Next, I can shoot the bombs with my missile and destroy them in midair like that. So that's about it for the bombs. So lastly, for the shields, so the shields here, you can see they're damaged by the bombs. I can also damage them with my missile, and they get destroyed. So there, the bomb hit me, so I died. So you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, I have lives for the player. So it started at 3, now I have 2, and I only have 1 spare life left with the icon there. So that's basically how that works. Now I'm going to complete the level, so I killed all the aliens, and it starts the next level. So now that I'm on the next level, the aliens will be a little bit faster. They also start a little bit farther down, and I'll have to kill them all again. So next for the UFO, so you can see the UFO just flew across there. It goes horizontally, either left, right, and it can drop bombs as well, and it makes the annoying sound. I'll try to shoot one to demo that. So next time it comes around, I'll try to shoot it. And in the meantime, I'll beat this other level to show that level increasing. So see if I can get this UFO here. No? Okay, we'll get the next one. But I can keep destroying the aliens. And so in the meantime, we can talk about the score. So the bottom aliens give 10 score, the middle ones give 20, and then the top ones give 30. And then you can see in the top right, my score gets updated based on how many aliens I've killed. So you can see now, because I'm on the higher level, it's getting pretty difficult. But I'll just keep destroying them. So there, I've gone through 2 whole levels. So lastly, let me just show the UFO. See if we can get one of those. Hopefully. So when I shoot the UFO, you'll see it die, and then it'll actually show the score that I got on the screen. So the UFO gives a random amount of score between 50 and 300. So let's get that. I'll probably just lose here because I'm going to go really fast. So yeah, there's a UFO, but I died. So let me try again and see if we can get a UFO. So there's a UFO flying. I'll try to shoot it. So I shot it, and you can see I got 300 points. So it displayed that on the screen and then added it to my score. So that's the UFO. So let me die again. Actually, this is a good time to show the complete game cycle. So the player has 3 lives. You can see when I died the last time, I had a high score, so it set the high score to 3,000. Now I'm going to die a couple more times to show the gameplay cycle. And when I reach 0 lives, it's going to transition to the game over screen. And then once I'm at the game over screen, it'll take me automatically back to the select screen. So there I ran out of lives. So now we're going to head over to the game over screen. And this just has a timer that takes us back to the select screen. And so now we're back here. Okay, so I think I demoed all of the in-game features there for single player. So next I will go to multiplayer. So here is multiplayer. So I start out as player 1, and I can do things in the scene, like destroy this shield, for example. And then when player 1 dies, it'll give player 2 a turn. So I'll die as player 1. Now we're going to go to player 2. So player 2 has a completely new scene with fresh shields and aliens and everything. And also when I score points as player 2, it updates in the top right instead of the top left because I'm player 2. So now when I die as player 2, it's gonna go ahead and put me back as player 1. So I'm back as player 1 where I destroyed the shield and the aliens and all the state is completely restored. Yeah, so it basically cycles back and forth between them. So I'll die as player 1 again. Now we're going back to player 2 on their second life. So player 2 dies, we go back to player 1 again. So this is the last life for player 1. And now when I die as player 1, it's going to go to the last life of player 2. So now we're on the last life of player 2. When I die as player 2, that is going to be the end of the game cycle completely, because now both players are out of lives, so it goes to game over, and then it sends us back to the select screen. And we can just repeatedly do that over again. We can do single player or multiplayer games. So that's an overview of the game features. I can just show real quickly the sound. So the missile has a sound, as I'm sure you heard, the aliens dying, as well as the UFO, which I'm sure you heard before. So those are the sounds. There's the UFO. Okay, so that's an overview of the game. Now let me go into the code and the design pattern part of the video. So I'll go through these quickly. Here's the singleton to start out with. I'll show the texture manager. So it's got a private constructor, and then it has a private static instance, and I do everything through that get instance method so that I have global access to the singleton. Next, for the flyweight, so we can look at fonts here. So fonts have glyphs. This is the little flyweight object for the glyph. And it represents an image on a texture for a particular glyph. So for example, in the glyph manager, I create the Space Invaders font with these glyphs in the Space Invaders texture. I then use those in a font object, which controls a sprite font. And a sprite font is interesting. It just iterates over the glyphs and renders them on the screen as the text on screen, which you saw. Okay, next for iterator. We can look at manager iterator here. So iterator just provides an interface for how to iterate over a collection. So for example, I have the D-Link iterator, the composite iterator, things like that. And then for usage of this, for example, in the timer event manager, I can write a loop with first is done and next to iterate over that collection. Next for the strategy. So let's go to the bombs for the strategy. So game object, bomb, strategy. So here's the bomb strategy for falling. So it just has an abstract fall method, and then the zigzag will flip it horizontally. We have the dagger will flip it vertically and stuff like that. And then each of the bombs has one of these strategies, and it just tells its strategy to execute its falling behavior. Next for the null object. So here in sprite proxy, we have a sprite proxy null, which just does nothing. And then in composites, for example, we can use the null sprite as our sprite so that when we go to render it, we just do nothing instead of rendering it. So for example, in Sprite Batch Manager, when we draw, we don't have to worry about whether it's a null sprite or a real sprite. We just go through and we call render, and it will do the right thing. Next for factory. So here in game object alien factory, we have a factory method to create each of the aliens. which sets them up from the Ghost Manager or from a new, and then it sets up all the properties to be attached to the right sprite batch manager. So that allows us to easily create new aliens in the factory. Next, for proxy, so here in sprite proxy, once again, sprite proxy is just another type of sprite base, except it holds an underlying real sprite, and then it can push its data to the real sprite here to basically control the XY coordinates, but then have one underlying real sprite that it points to. So we use that with the aliens to have a bunch of different aliens on the screen. Next, for the state pattern, so I'll show this in the player or in the ship. So game object ship, ship has a ship state, which just has a couple of different implementations. So for example, in shoot missile, when we're ready to shoot missile, we'll actually do it. So in this state, it'll actually shoot the missile, whereas when the missile's flying, shoot missile just does nothing. Either way, we just execute our current state. Next, for visitor, so I'll go to collision, collision visitor. This is the base class for all the game objects. It has all the stubbed out methods for visiting different types of objects. So for example, in alien, we can visit the missile, which we're going to collide with, which will then set up the collision event for that particular collision with this visit method. And for example, in the individual objects, we just call accept. In accept, we just call visit this. So next, that's the visitor. Next, for adapter. So here, I'll just show texture real quick. Is an adapter to the underlying Azul texture. It has all of its own properties that it just pushes to that underlying Azul texture, so we don't have to interact with it. Next, for the observer, so back to collision, each of these collision pairs has a collision subject, and then I can call notify listeners, which will broadcast the subject, and then I can add a listener to the subject by calling subscribe. And so these observers just have a notify method. So for example, if we go to observer, alien killed observer, in notify, it'll set the score and play the sound and do all that stuff when that happens. So next, for the command, I'll go to the timer events. So in the timer event manager, I just iterate over a set of commands in update and I call process. So the commands here, for example, are the animation command. It just has the override execute, which will be called in that timer manager, which will then do the one-off event to animate the sprite. Okay, next for the composite. So composite is right here under composite. So I have the component base class for all of the objects, and then they can be composites. So composites just have a D-link list of other components, and then those other components can be either composites themselves or leaves. And that allows me to build the tree structure. So for example, in game object alien, when I construct the alien grid, I construct the grid, and then I attach columns, and to the columns I attach individual aliens, and then I attach the column to the grid, and that gives me that composite hierarchy. Okay, next for object pool. So we'll jump over back to manager base. So manager base has the object pooling here. Pretty simple, just the active and reserve list. Whenever I want a new node, I'll pop it off the reserve list and always remove it from there so that all my objects are pooled. Next, for the template method. So again, in manager base, we have derive create node, which is basically a template method. So for example, in texture manager, I can implement this to create a new texture, and that will give me the template method for how to create that particular type of asset. Another place I implemented this is in game object. So in game object remove, we can go down to remove. I have an end play. So this is kind of like a template method where I can add custom behavior to a particular type of game object when it exits play. So yeah, that's about it for the design patterns, and that's it for the final video. So thank you.